Hello and welcome to the Haaretz Podcast. I'm Alison Kaplan-Summer in Tel Aviv. There aren't many places in the world where angry protests are aimed at the Red Cross. After all, the International Committee of the Red Cross, known as the ICRC, has been doing its good work for more than 150 years, offering humanitarian protection and assistance for people affected by armed conflict and other violence. But during the Gaza war, the Tel Aviv offices of the organization was the target of furious protesters demanding that the organization demand to be allowed to inspect the condition of the Israeli hostages held by Hamas in Gaza. In keeping with its principles of neutrality and impartiality, while condemning hostage-taking, the group did not publicly take Hamas to task for preventing them from fulfilling the role they play in so many other conflicts. The situation didn't improve after the ICRC played a key role in the organization and facilitation of the transfer of the hostages to Israeli authorities and then on to their families when they were freed. Instead, they were resented for their cooperation with Hamas's humiliating handover ceremonies. And so, instead of praise or gratitude, the ICRC were ridiculed, as in this satiric sketch portraying the group as a wartime version of Uber and the reaction of a hostage who gets into its car.
When you've been away for a while, you want to be taken home by someone special. For those once-in-a-lifetime moments, we proudly introduce the Red Cross Rideshare app.
Red Ride for hostage? Am I saying that right? Hey, do you want a water or like the aux cable or anything?
It's about time. Where have you been? Why didn't you bring medicine, humanitarian aid, a sign of life to my family?
No, we don't do that anymore. We pivoted to just being a rideshare app. It's pretty cool.
Aren't you the Red Cross?
Yeah, we cross between Israel and Gaza. It's kind of our new thing.
What?
Simply download the app, book your ride, and we'll be there within 15
Now that the living hostages are home, and with the help of the ICRC, the remains of all but a few have been returned to Israel, the organization is on a mission to rebuild its image and regain the trust and respect of the Israeli public. The ICRC delegation in the region has offices in Tel Aviv, the West Bank, and Gaza, with 3 sub-delegations. In each of them, they work closely with their local counterparts, with Palestinians, the Red Crescent Society, and in Israel, Magen David Adom. Joining me on the podcast to talk about their work and their reputational crisis in Israel is Yuval Arie Nevo, head of the Israeli sub-delegation for the ICRC. Our conversation is coming up.
The past 2 years have changed Israel, and the story keeps unraveling. Understand it with Haaretz. Subscribe now for 50% off with the code Haaretz50. That's Haaretz50.
Yuval Arie Nevo, head of the ICRC sub-delegation in Israel. Welcome to the podcast and thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Alison. Thank you for having me here today.
Yuval, the ICRC has always maintained some form of significant presence in Israel, but you've mostly worked behind the scenes and over the course of the Gaza war, particularly in the process of hostage relations, hostage releases, you have been in the spotlight for events that the entire country and, in fact, the world was watching. The releases of the hostages from Gaza, less publicly coordinating the parallel release and repatriation of Palestinian prisoners from Israeli prisons, and you've been an essential part of locating and returning the bodies of deceased hostages in Gaza. I would imagine that the ICRC is looking back on this to an extent with a sense of accomplishment, that all of these transfers occurred smoothly, correct? Do you consider this an operational success when you look over the course of the war?
At the ICRC, I think that we are looking at the complexity of the situation, and we are looking at several things that we actually did very well, and things that looking back for the passing 2 years, we would like to do a bit better. As we are currently recording this podcast, there is a search operation in Gaza happening when we are actually acting as neutral intermediary between the side to facilitate the agreement that was reached. And this is what we are doing already for quite a long time during the passing 2 years. We are happy to be able to bring people and deceased hostages back to their family, to be reunited with their loved ones. And I think in this regard, we are very proud of our work. We are also working in Israel, in Gaza, in the West Bank, and all those areas. We are doing things that accomplish our mandate properly. There are things, of course, that I assume that the listeners and people in Israel and beyond might look and think that should have done in a different way. From day one, we were stating publicly that taking of hostages is an illegal act and all hostages should be released immediately and unconditionally. We were unsuccessful in having access to the hostages when the living hostages were in Gaza. This is something that for us, it's not good. It's not. We would have liked to be able to realize our mandate in this regard. And of course, we depend on the consent of the parties to the conflict to allow this kind of things happening. I think also there is the element of reputation crisis, and to a certain extent, the way our communication and messaging is able to get to the Israeli public. We are frequently using legal way of talking which correspond to our mandate, but it doesn't really land very well in Israeli ears. This is something that, looking back, we are trying to do better.
When you talk about the problem in communication in language, first of all, maybe cultural gap, as ICRC is based in Switzerland, which tends to be very follow the rules European, but mostly it's because you're supposed to be impartial and neutral and only do what the two parties to a conflict agree that you can do. So do you feel that Israeli anger at Hamas was misplaced and put upon the ICRC for not getting access to the hostages, not being able to report on their medical condition, not able to pass medicine to them, that Hamas basically blocked that, and maybe the ICRC was not seen as having spoken out more strongly against the fact or expressed more frustration at being prevented from doing it and making the Israeli public think that you were accepting of this position that Hamas was refusing to allow access to the hostages?
First of all, I think that when it comes to public com, we were very straightforward from day one. As I said, we were stating clearly that the taking of hostages is illegal and they should all be released immediately and unconditionally. So we were actually communicating quite strongly from day one. I think that in order to answer the question, you have to look at our way of operation, which involves bilateral confidential dialogue with the parties to the conflict. Also, parties to the conflict is quite a legal-based term, and we are meaning that we are in contact with everyone who is conducting hostility, who is involved in fighting, including all organizations. It could be states, it could be non-state armed groups, it's Hamas and everyone else around the world. We are doing it everywhere. And when we are doing it, our tool that we are using is bilateral confidential dialogue. We are not an organization that speaks publicly, because for us, it allows us to share the concerns that we are seeing on ground with the parties and to suggest and ask to the parties to properly implement international humanitarian law, which is the law that should be implemented in times of war. This is the law that sets limits to the way war is conducted. What people hear in Israel and worldwide in our public communication is a very reduced version of what we are actually saying in closed rooms behind the scene with other actors.
But in the Israeli public, and you're Israeli, so you can understand it, the silence, which was obviously confidentiality, on the fact that you were allowed not even the most minimal communication transfer on the state of the hostages to their families here, was very difficult for Israel to accept, especially when presumably Israel was cooperating with such terms and conditions as a signatory to the Geneva Convention when it comes to Palestinian prisoners in Israel?
As an Israeli living here and born and raised here, I can fully understand what you're saying and the different frustration that was caused to the Israeli public when hearing all this. So actually, we have to understand that our public com has meaning. We are working on ground with the parties to the conflicts. It's not an easy place to work in Gaza. It's not an easy place to work while hostilities are ongoing. And therefore, I do understand the frustration, but then there should be also a trust. And we did have a gap of trust with the Israeli public during the passing 2 years. There should be a trust that actually we are doing the mandate that is provided to us by the states who signed the Geneva Convention to do our work properly. Operational consequences for the people who are working for the ICRC if we are saying things in the wrong way, in the wrong platforms. And more than this, we are communicating for the people we are serving. They are the people affected by armed conflicts. And this is the people that we see in our eyes. We do not communicate in a manner that will put them in harm or that will jeopardize our operations.
There were comedy sketches on Israeli television portraying the Red Cross during the hostage transfers as kind of useless, cold, unfeeling Uber drivers transporting the hostages. Was that portrayal accurate? Was there a lot going on behind the scenes in Gaza that now can be told, now that the living hostages are here, that you would like to defend the ICRC's role as having been much more than driving them from point A to point B?
Yes, I actually was exposed to those clips. And I have to say that the situation is very different. We have to understand that working in area like Gaza, it requires a lot. It requires, first of all, to be present for long term with professional team who is there. In Israel, we are based already for 50 years. Same it is in Gaza, and we have the trust of the population and the trust of the authorities also in Israel. The situation that we are facilitating agreement reached between the sides to have these release operations is much more complicated than what one could think of. Think about a situation that in the middle of the night, you receive a call, you go out in your car, ICRC car, to a meeting point. In the middle of the night, Gaza is a hostile area. Think about the roads are destructed. Think about the risk of driving over unexplosive ordnance. Think about the situation of losing your way, losing your connection in the radio with the headquarters. All these are frequent situations that our team were facing during the past 2 years. Think about the situation that you already have Israeli hostages in your car, and there are children trying to hold the car. What do? Thinking about the situation that you get the call very quickly. The two sides are telling you, take the hostage from here, bring it to the other side. You have to plan very quickly, and it's a very complicated operation to do in Gaza these days, taking into account the hostilities, taking into account the tension, taking into account that the population in Gaza would not necessarily. You think about the children, they are on the car. How could you bring them down? You have a hostage in your car. I understand the sentiments within the Israeli public. I think that the ICRC was irrelevant before the 7th of October, so the public did not know us. We became very relevant after the 7th of October. And becoming relevant doesn't mean that you become popular. And there was a lot of frustration. Myself, as an Israeli, I use the train every day. I use the buses. I hear the people. I read the news. The frustration is totally understandable. And I can tell you that myself, working for the ICRC for more than a decade, I feel very confident at the things that we were trying to do. We have the responsibility to do everything possible to realize our mandate, including release of hostages, including access to the hostages, including many other things which are defined in the Geneva Convention for us. We are trying to do it since day one. We are doing it already for 160 years. We're doing it 100 countries, 60 states in a situation of conflict. We're involved in 120 non-state armed groups. We are there. We have the reputation. I can understand why in Israel it became messy.
It's hard to forget, and I think this was part of the reputation crisis that you had watching the ICRC representatives on the stages in these kind of twisted, perverse Hamas, signing a document ceremonies where they handed over the hostages, looking official, looking like you were cooperating hand in hand with Hamas on this. Do you feel like these ceremonies and the participation damaged your organization's reputation? Do you regret doing it?
I would say that participating in the operation requires a lot of preparations with both sides of the agreement. We are coordinating in advance, and we are doing our best to ensure that the dignity and the respect of the people that under our mandate that we are serving, that we are releasing, that we are transferring deceased hostages, we are doing our best to ensure that the conditions correct and it's done in the most respectful and dignified manner. Now we have to take a choice. We have people on ground operating, doing their work, things are happening, and we have to bring the people back home. What do you do? Put yourself in our shoes. What do you do? You have to choose. You are in the middle of a situation. You have to choose whether you are realizing the mandate, the agreement, and we are choosing to bring the people home. And we did it, actually.
Even if you have to participate in a ceremony that you don't necessarily believe is legitimate in any way?
I would say that around the world, we are operating in many things. We are very experienced humanitarians, and when you are conducting humanitarian operations, things happen, and then you have the eye on the ball, meaning that sometimes things are happening which are not perfect, but I think that the people in Israel, I think that the authorities prefer that the people come back home. As of the passing 2 years, as well as this day, today, there is no other organization other than the International Committee of the Red Cross that could conduct these kind of operations in Gaza and bring the people back home.
You feel misunderstood, that Israelis don't realize that you're not the United Nations with any kind of a political role, and you're not one of these human rights organizations that reports on what happens in Israel, the West Bank, and Gaza, that you actually try to get things done, right?
We are very different from others. We are international organization mandated by the Geneva Conventions. The conventions that 193 countries have signed are setting the tone and setting our role in conflicts. And this requires us to work differently than anyone else. I want also to address the issue of neutrality. I think it is also a source of a great frustration in the Israeli public, but much beyond, because neutrality is not a sexy choice to make. Neutrality for us, it's an instrument. It is an instrument in the sense that we have to work everywhere. We have to work with everyone. And wars, they are triggered by different things. It could be stories, it could be spiritual beliefs, it could be drugs, it could be so many things. Now, if you are coming in this very polarized world, you are coming with your team to do humanitarian work, and you start talking with the parties about their narrative, about their request, about their claims, about their verdicts, it will not fly. You will not be able to discuss with them humanitarian issues. You will not be able to conduct humanitarian relief operations for the population affected, and you will not be able to bring the hostages back home.
And just as you can't speak or won't speak publicly about Hamas violating international law and their behavior, not cooperating with agreements in which they're supposed to allow Red Cross visits, in the same way you don't talk publicly about the way that Israel might be violating Geneva Conventions or international law in its behavior in the West Bank and Gaza as well.
Our bilateral confidential dialogue is being done all over the world with the authorities in a manner which is not being published. This is in closed room. This is the place where we can discuss humanitarian concerns, the things that we see on ground. This is where we do the business.
Yuval, you want to talk about some of the other things, not just that what you've been sort of criticized for doing. Let's go back to October 7th. You were here when it all happened and played out, and spell out what exactly the ICRC did at the very start, right? It's part of your mandate to be ready for these kind of situations, to step in and support local efforts and fill the gaps. How did you do that?
We were actually a big delegation in Israel and the occupied territories also before the 7th of October. We were not so operational within Israel. And actually on the 7th of October, I recall, like any other Israeli citizen, this horrific day and very tragic situations. And we woke up in the morning, the first thing, 8:30 o'clock, we already had management and coordinators a meeting online to start seeing what are the things that has to be addressed. We have a mechanism in the ICRC to mobilize people and goods very quickly in order to ensure that we are able to respond to the humanitarian needs that arise from this kind of crisis. This what happened already on the 7th of October from day one. It's a process. We established the crisis mechanism in the delegation in Geneva, and we will start mobilizing resources because this was also a game changer for us. It was a crisis also for us in the ICRC. This is not something that happened before. It was the unexpected. I can tell you that we were getting ourselves together quite quickly, and we talked about things that we are less proud of. I'm actually very proud about the things that we were able to achieve. And we went to the south 2 days after. On Tuesday, we were already in the south visiting communities together with our main partner, Magen David Adom in Israel. We have joined the Shiva of ambulance driver in Ofakim. We met the teams that were going through terrible situations, Magen David Adom teams. We were able to meet communities affected. And then directly after, I recall the Friday directly after the 7th of October, we already had the families of hostages in our offices. We started the engagement. We started the discussion. It was very difficult at the time.
And were you able really to offer operational help inside Israel during the war? And I'm also wondering, going forward after the war, do you think that because of what has happened and this experience that the role of your organization will have changed in Israel in the future?
I think it has already changed. If we were quite strategic before in Israel, while the other structures were much more operational, we shifted significantly since the 7th of October and we became very operational also in Israel. These days, we are able to realize the complete ICRC mandate in Israel, which include documentation of incidents when the civilian population in Israel is affected. In the hostilities between Iran and Israel in June this year, we were able to be in 13 different sites in 2 weeks, meeting the people, understanding their needs, and also documenting, because part of our work is to remind the parties to the conflict what is the international humanitarian law demands. We have projects in Israel. We are concluding this day the construction of a mental health resilience center in the north of Israel for the benefit of the north. People there were heavily affected by the conflicts. We are working with children in risk in the south, in Ofakim. We were refurnishing frontline clinic in Majal Shams following the horrific killing of 12 children there. Also, our work with Magen David Adom is significant. This is ongoing for many years, and there we are working hand with hand as part of the Red Cross movement.
Another obstacle you've had to face in explaining yourself is, again, this confidentiality policy of staying relatively quiet. One small act kind of slipped out into the media, and that was after the hostages' release, it was revealed that Hamas handed over letters written by hostages Alon Ohel and Guy Gilboa Dalal to the Red Cross while they were filming a propaganda video in front of a Red Cross office in Gaza City in August. And the hostages' captors passed on the letters to the ICRC, and then 2 weeks later, it was brought to their families. Can you tell us at all about something about how that came about?
Unfortunately, I cannot provide the details. I think that there are things that are being done behind the scenes, doing our work, doing conflicts. We are trying our best to ensure that the relations, the family contacts between people who are separated in war are kept. I think about the joy of a parent to receive this kind of letter of hostage after so long, of a family member. At the end of the day, our mandate is to bring people together, to ensure that the families are receiving family news from their beloved ones.
Do you feel that now, I don't even want to say that we're at the end of it because we're not quite at the end of all of it, but do you feel yet that trust is being rebuilt between the Israeli public and the ICRC, or do you feel like there's still a long way to go?
I think that we should nuance the trust gap. I think that the Israeli public, and also it's not only the Israeli public who is criticizing the ICRC. I can tell you that around the world we are facing constant critics. This is part of our bread and butter. It's difficult for the general public to understand our work and the fact that we are actually engaging in a neutral manner with all parties to the conflict. We are benefiting from a very high level of trust with the authorities in Israel. You need a very high level trust on both sides, and of course in Israel, from the authorities to allow us do our work, to coordinate. I don't know if people know that we have an Israeli team working in Tel Aviv, working in Jerusalem. This is not something new. I work for more than a decade in the ICRC. I'm working daily with Palestinians. It sounds like cliche about uniting for humanity, but this is what our daily bread and butter. We speak constantly with people around the globe, also in neighboring countries, and we do what our mandate is telling us. So you're asking me about reputation crisis. You ask me about the emotions in the Israeli public. I feel them. I go in the train. I hear the soldiers. I hear the people. I hear my family. I'm very grateful for this opportunity, actually, because I think that we are being misunderstood in a manner. It's a bit heavy to understand the ICC. It's not something that you can just tell your parents, this is what I'm doing. You have to give the complete account.
Is there suspicion on the other side, too, on the Palestinian side, since, as you said, you do cooperate closely with the Israeli authorities?
We have a sub-delegation in Gaza, which is a big sub-delegation. We have about 400 people there in 3 different sites. It requires trust. So the trust from the authorities in Gaza, from Hamas and others, it is there. The general Palestinian public, I would assume that people are also not very big fans of everything that we're doing or the way we're doing it. But as I said, we are a mandated organization. We do our work. It's not about being popular that what motivates us. We do our work.
So we talked about your successes and your failures, looking back on it all over the course of the war. If you were able to change anything and behave differently in any way, what would you have changed? What would you have done differently?
Because the fact that we were very unpopular, and maybe we still are in Israel, we were unable to outreach properly in the state of Israel. We were facing significant security situations for ICRC members. Very unpleasant situation. We had protests is not the issue, but we had violent manifestations of disagreement with the ICRC mandate, the way we are acting.
People behaved violently towards ICRC representatives in Israel?
We had protests that the level of emotions were very high. And of course, I fully understand it myself as a human being, as an Israeli, as a Jew. All the emotions after the 7th of October events, it was disaster. We felt very bad. And to a certain extent, it took us time to have enough confidence to go out and outreach. And currently we are meeting state authorities, local authorities, regional authorities, NGOs, communities, individual affected people who are actors of influence. We are meeting everyone. We have a significant network, and it took us time to get us there. We did not have the resources. And also on myself, maybe I was not brave enough at the right time. You know, the level of hate, the level of emotions were so high. It was really difficult to put yourself in the fire. And, you know, I tried it myself several times. We thought about giving more interviews. We thought about talking with people. We had people knocking the doors in the ICRC offices and just entering. And they were unwilling to leave because they wanted to tell us what they think we have to do in relation to the hostages. It was very scary.
But operationally, you feel like you did everything you could have possibly done within the confines of the mandate of the ICRC to try to help the hostages, to try to facilitate their release and better care for them?
We were, from day one, mobilizing everyone we could all over the world. We had very senior people deployed, discussing, engaging. Our work is to work with the parties to achieve our mandate. We are exclusively humanitarian organization. And I think we did everything we could, and we are still doing everything we can in order to bring the 2 remaining hostages back home.
Yuval Arie Nevo, head of the ICRC sub-delegation in Israel. I asked you some questions that weren't so easy to answer. I really appreciate the fact that you answered them so straightforwardly and honestly. And good luck to you with your really, really important work.
Thank you, Alison.
And that's it for this episode of the Haaretz Podcast. Thanks to my guest, Yuval Arie Nevo, and to producer and editor Nara Malkin. If you want to continue to listen to our podcast and make sure you don't miss an episode, please subscribe to us on Apple or Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. And please, if you're so inclined, leave us a 5-star rating, and that way more people can find us. And to keep up with all the latest news on Israel, the Middle East, and the Jewish world, don't forget to subscribe to and follow Haaretz.com. I'm Alison Kaplan-Summer, and until next time, shalom from Tel Aviv.